Hello everyone, hello teacher. In this video, I will be giving information about symbols, metaphors, allusions, and the significance of the title. In the novel Nights at the Circus by Angela Carter, I will be doing this through my presentation. And let's start with the symbols. The first symbol I want to mention is wings of Sophie Favors, and her wings are nothing than symbol of freedom. Her wings helped her a lot in her escape from overbearing, narrow-minded society, and helped her to fly 20th century freedom of feminism. The terrible patriarchal society of the time was very oppressive, especially against women, and her wings symbolize her escape from all the negative oppressiveness of the whole society over women. And let's go on with another symbol, which is the women themselves. So they symbolize through the novel the suffrage of women in general, but our protagonist Sophie is a powerful figure of woman as well. We clearly see the society and people's attitude towards women, and this inevitably causes them to suffer. Some other symbols are also quite important through the narrative of the novel, such as clocks, books, Ma Nelson's sword, and ice sculpture, and the train. So, clock is, symbol of time, and as a tool, they originally show time so that we can be aware of time. But in the novel, the clock is more than just a tool. When it's broken, we feel kind of suspension of time. We feel some uncertainty. But when it works safe and sound, we clearly see time in the narrative through the novel. When Sophie tells her story to reporter Walser, the passage of time is observable and clear. But when the clock is broken, this perception goes away and Sophie begins to age, begins to get older. And books. Books, on the other hand, symbol of escape and knowledge. The book collection of Brothel helped girls to acquire knowledge, and knowledge is something they can merely possess under tough circumstances which they have. The books helped girls to run away from everything in real life and helped them to join the world inside themselves, inside books. And Ma Nelson's sword is another symbol, and it's a symbol of strength and power for Sophie. The sword is just a small part of Sophie's costume where she wears in battle, but the feeling when Sophie holds it is different. She feels strong, powerful, and later on, when the sword is broken and Sophie begins to feel different, we see that she is powerless and vulnerable. From that, we can conclude the sword is a symbol of strength. And the ice sculpture of the Grand Duke, who is the owner of ice sculpture, the material ice itself could melt or get shattered. But in the novel, ice sculpture gradually melts, and so does Sophie in the hands of the Grand Duke. As the sculpture melts, Sophie also changes because of the oppressive attitudes of the Grand Duke. When the sculpture completely melts, Sophie's confidence in herself goes away, and she begins to feel like unguarded. The next one, and I think an important symbol, is the terrain, because it symbolizes progress through the novel. Uh, how can we make a comment on this? Like, progression in the novel cannot be seen constantly. Uh, Train at the time was the fastest transportation vehicle of the time, and the circus is a constantly moving place as well. This shows us that when the train traveled to land of Siberia, this clearly shows us that the progression stops. The progression could change anytime, and it's very open to change. The time of progression for Circus through the novel stops according to the travel, considering the travel to the Siberia. And let's move on to metaphors. Angela Carter uses metaphors almost perfectly to deliver the idea clearly and keep the reader inside the novel with her flawless narration. In my opinion, the most obvious and important metaphor is the protagonist of the novel, Sophie. In one of her interviews, Angela Carter said about Sophie as in the following: Hayward is a very literal creation. She is very literally a winged spirit. She is very literally the winged victory, but very, very literally so. How inconvenient to have wings, and by extension, how very, very difficult to be born so out of key with the world. Something that women know all about is how very difficult it is to enter an old game. What you have to do is to change the rules and make a new game, and that's really what she's about. This is from the writer's herself from an interview uh, in the year, I believe, yes, in 1994. As the writer herself clearly pointed out, Sophie is more than just a winged creature. She is the rule changer, game changer figure for women. There are also some other metaphors to check, like some voice clanked like dustbin lids. So, in the novel, it's stated as Hayward sang out in a voice that clanked like dustbin lids. This metaphor is important because whoever is the person who hears Sophie's voice, the voice is going to stuck in his mind. In my opinion, this is also related to Sophie's powerful presence and her magical effect on people. And let's go on to another one. Comparison of Ishmael to an unfurnished house. So, it says, yet there remained something a little unfurnished about him still. He was like a handsome house that has been let furnished. The person depicted here as house to be unfurnished is the other protagonist of the novel, the reporter Jack Walser. We can understand how charming, how handsome he is from this metaphor. Another metaphor is holding the glass of wine like a gun. So it says, this one is, I think, about women in general. Hitherto this woman had taken no part in the interview but stood stiffly beside the mirror, holding a glass of wine like a weapon, eyeing Jack Walser as sculpturously as if she were attempting to assess to the last fortnight just how much money he had in his wallet. Yes. I think holding the glass of wine like a gun. Here, it's the one who holds it is the woman, and uh, this metaphor shows us once again the power, dignity, nobleness, courage, and quality of women, because it's not as easy as just holding a glass. I mean, holding the glass of wine like a gun requires something special, something graceful. And this one is, I believe, important, Iowa cornfields. So it says in the novel, I believe, before this one, when you look at a massive cornfield, you may just get lost for a moment and see how stunning that cornfield over the horizon. This is what exactly happens when Jack Walser looked at Sophie Favors. It says, Favors reappeared, flushed to peer at herself eagerly in the mirror as if pleased and surprised to find herself again so robustly rosy-cheeked and shiny-eyed. Walser was surprised at her wholesome look, like an Iowa cornfield. With this metaphor, Angela Carter simply shows us how stunning, how beautiful and charming Sophie is, and the rest of the women are, and how defenseless men are against those beautiful creatures. We see the place Iowa here because Angela Carter spent some part of her life in the Iowa, United States. In one of her interviews, a reporter named Rosemary Carroll asked, sorry, so sorry. A reporter asked her, "How do you find Iowa?" And she said, "We like it a lot, and there is area uncrowded with many trees and not much else for miles." From the interview and her sentence, we can conclude that Angela Carter spent some part of his life in Iowa, and we can see Iowa in the novel as well. So, even if we don't realize through the novel, I believe Angela Carter added some small details like Iowa to the novel, and if we manage to learn all these small details with the help of her interviews and our realization from the novel, we can understand her and her works in a much better way. So let's go on with the allusions in the novel. Let's start with biblical allusions. There are some biblical allusions, allusions to other literary works, and I also managed to find an allusion to a person. Let's start with biblical allusions. It's stated as, like Lucifer, I fell down, down, down. I tumbled bang with a bump on the Persian rug below me, flat on my face amongst those blooms and beasts that never graced no natural forest. Those creatures of dream and abstraction, not unlike myself, Mr. Walser. And then I knew I was not yet ready to bear on my back the great burden of my unnaturalness. In this allusion to Lucifer, our protagonist Sophie Favors is described as Lucifer. Like Lucifer, she showed resistance and rebellion. She was the fallen angel, and her wings are another metaphor to this. Her rebellion and resistance against the patriarchal society and the oppression of women is this uh, is the reference to this illusion. There is a different person named Rosenkraut, and he is a customer of Madame Shrek's. He refers to favors as Azrael, Flora, Venus, and Gabriel. It's stated as Azrael, Azrael, Ashrael, Azrael, Azariel, Gabriel, Dark Angel of many names, welcome to me. From your home in the third heaven. See, I welcome you with roses no less paradoxically vernal than your presence, who, like Persephone, comes from the land of the dead to herald new life. He simply wants to express that he was astonished by Sophie's look and he saw her beyond any creature. He thought that she was something that the human mind couldn't figure out. He thinks that if Sophie is sacrificed to God, there will be abundance in lots of places, and especially in youth of people. There will be more younger generations. He treats her like a sacred object, and this also shows how he thinks and sees women in general. The only allusion to people I managed to find is to the French painter Toulouse-Lautrec, who is someone very, very small and tiny. It says her inaccessibility was also legendary, even if, as Walser had already noted on his pad, she was prepared to make a certain exceptions for exigent French dwarfs. So, the dwarf here, the allusion to the painter Toulouse-Lautrec. He is very short and specifically 152 centimeters long. He painted posters of Parisian nightlife and executed some nice performances. He is known as a Paris admirer. And there are also allusions to other works, such as Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee, Shakespeare, Henrik Ibsen's three-act play A Doll's House, mostly allusions to the title. This play is about the traditional roles of men and women in the 19th century society and 19th century marriage. But the most important allusion to another literary work is Ishmael in the novel Moby Dick. He is the protagonist of Moby Dick, and he is also the only protagonist narrator of Herman Melville's Moby Dick. He is in Nights at the Circus is the protagonist of the novel Jack Walser. When Angela Carter talks about gives information in the novel about Jack Walser. At some point, it's stated as Ishmael instead of Walser or Jack. And let's move to the significance of the title. And in this part, to be honest, I literally checked everything I had, like my sources, the sources on the internet, the interviews of the writer, but I couldn't find even a clue to the title. But I have some ideas, and I will be sharing those ideas in this part. So there are some things to consider, like the play Circus is the actual circus, which is one of the settings in the novel. But why Angela Carter chose this title? What is it related to? In my opinion, it's related to feminism and the escape of women from the oppressive society of the time. In the novel, favors and women are looked down on by the patriarchal society. A circus is actually a place where they can be powerful, in charge, and a place where they feel free. In Freudian terms, the psychologist Freud, in his terms, this is related to sublimination. It is a defense mechanism resulting in unacceptance of certain behaviors or characteristic traits on people and executing these behaviors or characteristic traits in a way that people accept. In our case, this is exactly happens. Sophie is not accepted in the society because she had wings, she was different. And she was a woman at the end. And the circus was the ultimate place where she could run away from all this oppression and she could feel free. And this finally displays us the actual power and beauty of women. The title, in my opinion, is related to this. So, sorry again. These are my references here. All the sources I used. And this is it. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day.